Some big news coming in from the Defense Department, and I have to say it's quite a relief to know that while China's building hypersonic missiles, our military is bravely fighting the real enemy, uh, m- mean tweets about Charlie Kirk. Yep, it's for real. That's what our thin skinned Secretary of War has decided he should pour a lot of resources into, I'm sure millions of dollars. They have started 300 investigations on a hunt for Charlie Kirk critics inside the Defense Department and the military establishment. Uh, I'm just glad. I'm just glad they're going to weed these people out and keep us protected because this, you know what, we've been living with this kind of thing for decades, and it's only until this president came along that anybody did anything about it. Thank goodness, right? Ah, this was really destroying our nation. These Charlie Kirk critics. And let me just say, before I go too far, because a lot of people misunderstand things or take things the wrong way, I in no way support any political violence for any reason, no matter how much any of us disagrees with somebody or even dislikes somebody. Violence must stay out of our system. That's all I have to say about it. But I firmly believe that, and that's what I believed all my life. Of course, it goes without saying, 99% of the people in this country do believe that. So check this out. The Pentagon has investigated nearly 300 Defense Department employees, including service members, civilian workers, and contractors, for comments appearing online after last month's shooting death of a conservative activist, Charlie Kirk. The sweeping ongoing inquiry follows an extraordinary directive by the department's political leadership, or by the department's thin skinned political leadership, to silence criticism of a prominent, uh, fervent supporter of the president, basically, is what it says. Okay, he's polarizing, he's unabashed in his views. But what they're really doing, they don't want to silence criticism of him because he was polarizing or unabashed in his views. They want to silence them because he was a fervent supporter of the president. All right. The order from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to target those critical of Kirk reflects a deepening alarm over the former Fox News personality's stewardship of the military, whose personnel are expected to remain loyal to the Constitution, not any one party or president. And that's the bottom line here. They are trying to enforce loyalty to the president above loyalty to the Constitution. So many of us saw this coming. So many of us former Republicans saw it coming, and that's why we're not a supporter of this president, and we can't be. Um, and we told our fellow Republicans, this is what's going to happen. They're like, oh, no, no, you're wrong to say that. You should not say that. That's horrible that you would say that about this dear man sent from God to save our country. Anyway, so yeah, that's what they would tell us. But here we have it. You can see it. The signs are all over the place that that's exactly what they're doing, clamping down on any speech that goes against the president. And this is certainly not the only place they're doing this. Hegseth's press office, when asked if the secretary regretted laughing about the attack on Paul Pelosi, which he laughed about a few years ago, the press officer vigorously defended Hegseth and denounced what the press officer, Parnell, called whataboutism being promulgated by the news media. So if you dare to criticize or raise a question or say, hey, what about Pete? Didn't he do the same thing he's now investigating these people for doing? And the answer is always, hey, how dare you say what about? You just always bring it back to what we're doing. No, you need to keep the focus on what you're doing. Doesn't matter what we did. We're going after you. The situation is not the same, Parnell said in a statement to the Washington Post. Here's how the situation, he says, is different between when Hegseth laughed about Paul Pelosi being shot. He said, in this case, an American was assassinated. We will not tolerate military or civilian personnel who celebrate or mock the assassination of a fellow American. Okay, well, now we have the head of the Defense Department saying, sorry, I didn't call it by its new name. We have the head of the Defense Department who laughed at the shooting of a fellow American who was the husband of the Speaker of the House of Representatives at the time. And he laughed about it. And I'm thinking, isn't laughing kind of like mocking? If you laugh about somebody getting shot, isn't that kind of like mocking it? Can you imagine how these thin-skinned people would take it if somebody laughed about the shooting of Charlie Kirk? I didn't even laugh. Didn't like Charlie that much, but I didn't laugh. I thought it was horrible. But if anyone laughed about it, that they would deport him, citizen or not. They would deport him to South Sudan or somewhere horrible. Peter Feaver, I like that name, who studies civil military relations at Duke University, said the Trump administration's investigations of government employees, particularly those within the Defense Department, are consistent with longstanding efforts to banish politics from the workplace, from the military workplace. And that's right. They have a valid point, he said, noting, however, that the challenge for the administration is, will they enforce it on both sides? Oh, big question mark there. Who could know? No one has any idea. No, don't waste a single minute asking that question because we know the answer. Of course, they won't enforce it on both sides. That's not who these people are. Let's take a look real quick, though, at the military's rules on speech because they differ from civilian rules where we can pretty much say anything about anybody, but they can't. Active military members can be disciplined for publicly criticizing the president if their comments are viewed as contemptuous toward government officials or if they are participating in partisan political activities. They're not allowed to go out and campaign or join a campaign for a candidate for any office, and their comments are restricted insofar as they might be harmful to good order and discipline. All those rules make sense. You have to have rules about these things in the military. However, mild or general discussion of political issues is allowed when expressed in a personal capacity and done carefully, meaning not you don't do it while you're in uniform, you don't do it as if you're representing the military, and you're not using disrespectful or contemptuous language. The Uniform Code of Military Justice, Article 88, specifically forbids contemptuous words against the President of the United States, the Vice President, Congress, the Secretary, get this, the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of a Military Department, the Secretary of Transportation, or the Governor or Legislature of a state. That all makes sense, right? You have these guys who their job is to defend the nation from external threats. Well, how can they defend it effectively if they're here inside the country or outside, wherever they may be stationed, harshly criticizing the leadership of the country? That just undermines us. We don't want those kind of people in the military talking like that. So these rules are good, and it's meant to keep partisanship out of the military. It should be completely neutral, completely nonpartisan. Now, we've seen how Trump twists rules and laws. He will take one little word in a law and say, "Hey, it's not exactly that what we're doing. So that should be allowed," and take it to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will go, "Hey, you know what? You're right. Yeah, it's not exactly that." So look at what this Article 88, says in the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Let's get the wording right because we could use this against them if we learn how to twist the law like they did, which I'm not suggesting we do. But if we played like they play, here's how we would play this. The Article 88 says you cannot speak contemptuously against the president, the vice president. This is a quote from Article 88. Congress, the Secretary of Defense, and all the rest. Okay, it doesn't say anything about the Secretary of War. So Pete Hegseth is not the Secretary of Defense. So go for that all day long. You can say whatever you want about Pete Hegseth because the military rules only say you cannot speak contemptuously about the Secretary of Defense. So you won't. You will speak contemptuously about the Secretary of War, which is not mentioned in Article 88. Anyway, all of this doesn't mean that any disagreement is punished, but insulting, mocking, or demeaning remarks, such as you could not say, if you're in the military, you cannot say the president is a disgrace and should be overthrown. That's punishable under Article 88. But you could say, I disagree with this administration's foreign policy. Generally okay if it's respectful and personal. Anyway, so once again, we have the very thin-skinned leadership of our government going after personal grievances, going after people who they feel may have personally offended the president or insulted him, even though you notice that Article 88 doesn't say anything about Charlie Kirk. You can't say something bad about the president or the Congress or the Secretary of Defense, and it lists all these things, the Secretary of a military department, all that. It didn't say anything about Charlie Kirk. It didn't say anything about somebody who has a political organization. So that literally is off limits. They are allowed to say whatever they want about things that are not mentioned in Article 88, although since there is a relation between Charlie Kirk and the president, they may want to do so respectfully and not do so in a vulgar or contemptuous way or mocking way. But if they're not doing that, then why not? Why that's not covered under Article 88. It doesn't say you can't talk about political operatives. So anyway, of course, that's not going to stop them. They're going to go after these people. They'll probably bring cases, and if they do, there will come to nothing because there's no evidence in the law, I'm sure. Like I say, I haven't seen any of these comments that they're talking about, but I just have a feeling the way they so over the top exaggerate everything else, I have a way they're exaggerating this in an over the top way as well. Anyway, all right. Well, that's what's going on in today's military, and I hope you'll feel safe and like you're in a nation that's as absolutely protected as it can be from all threats, from external threats and from threats within our own military of those mean tweets. All right. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.